And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com, brought to you in part by Yahoo Sports. Don't forget to check out their DFS offerings each and every day over at Yahoo Sports. As I've said many times over, football just around the corner, and Yahoo did a good job of hosting some very big tournaments last year. Sure, we'll see some of that as well, and some baseball throughout the summer. They do a good job with their $10 and $15 and $20 tournaments on certain days, so check that out. Check out the different roster construction and price points as well. Dan Strafford, Dave. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Hold on. Let's keep going, but I just want to make sure to get into the proper attire here for our podcast.
My man. I have a feeling he's not watching.
Yeah, I have a feeling too, but
too much happy talk.
Too much happy talk. We're here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com to talk about the 4-game early slate. As always, you get plenty of content over at Awesemo. You get the DFS.
Could you imagine someone really just stops watching because someone has a hat on backwards? That's incredible. And it's like, now I'll never wear a hat forwards again.
Well, so the funny story is, for me, anecdotally, so, I've 3 daughters. My youngest is turning 2 in July. So she's starting to, figure out the world. And I can't wear a hat backwards in front of her. If I put a hat on backwards, she goes, Dada, no. Dada, no. It makes me turn it around and wear it forwards. And, she's not wrong. I mean, look at it.
I actually think you pull it off all right.
I mean, with the sweater and the dress shirt too, but
looks all right. It does. I'm serious. I would certainly tell you the truth.
I certainly appreciate that. I think that it's just funny that she, at an early age, has already been like, Dad, don't do this to me. The oldest already says anything I say to her is embarrassing. So I'm well versed in the dad jokes and look forward to them being teenagers and scaring the crap out of any boys or girls that they bring home in any way, shape, or form. So good luck to anyone who tries to date my daughters and deal with my terrible sense of humor.
Yeah, Godspeed.
4 games for this early slate. As I was saying, we have the strategy show in the morning. We have the deep dive for the write-up. That's behind the paywall. Use the promo code EarlyBird to become a member, 50% off your first month. And then you get the deeper dive at 5 p.m., live before lock. So you get tons of content. We're going to cover this 4-game slate. We're going to go game by game to give you an early preview of the early slate. And then, of course, all the rest of the content coming your way. Anything new in your world, Dave? Anything I heard a new patio coming your way? Is that?
Yeah, man. We just got it put in. We just got it put in.
Oh, you mean you didn't do that yourself?
Today? No, most of it I did. If it was pavers, I would have, but pavers are a lot of maintenance. You know what I mean?
They are. Yeah.
Like,
you got to grout.
I love the look of pavers. I love the look, but there's a lot more maintenance. You got to weed them all the time, and if you don't do it right, it can start getting ugly. Like if it's not perfect, and I don't do that stuff. I would figure out how to do it. Like I figured out how to do everything else. Like I finished my basement practically on my own, and it looks amazing. But that was stuff I could figure out and felt okay about. With this, I could do it. But Justine's uncle actually owns a contracting business, nice. So he came over, just do the concrete, and it came out really nice. Though came out nice, and it'll last us a while. So we have it in time for our Memorial Day party.
Nice. Yeah, we're
going to do pavers in the front, though. I'm going to do like a nice paver patio in the front. That'll be nice.
We're in the market. We're trying to get contractors out to put a small patio in our backyard off of we put a new door on the house on one side. So we're going to do a small patio with, to put the table out and the grill and all that stuff. I don't know if it's going to be done in time, though, because we have 2 people coming out who are like, oh, yeah, we can get to it by September. So that's not really going to do it for me. So I'm trying to find other contractors.
Wait. They booked you out to September?
Yeah, I mean, they can come out for an estimate, but they would actually do the work in August and September.
I know it's a busy time of year, and rain has killed them over the past while, but that still seems like a very long time out. Okay, sorry. Too much happy talk.
It's too much happy talk. Let's get to this 4-game slate. We do have, I think it's on FanDuel as well. I'll double-check FanDuel to make sure the slate's the same. 4 games, Oakland, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, Kansas City, St. Louis, Seattle, Texas. Doesn't look like there's going to be any weather concerns here. Obviously, that can change. You do have a dome in Milwaukee to counteract any problems with the weather. It's Castillo, Montes, Davies, Wainwright, Rodriguez. That's Jeffrey Rodriguez, right, for Cleveland. Yeah, Jeffrey Rodriguez. And then you have Gonzales, Keller, and Sampson are your starters that are currently listed. as our available pitchers. We'll go game by game. We'll look at Vegas totals that are available to us, and then give you each pitcher a quick look, and then some of the bats that we might be on. We can start here, Dave, with Oakland and Cleveland, a game that on Monday, no, make that Tuesday. Sorry, get my days confused. On Tuesday, had Chris Davis leave because of that apparent continuing hip injury. I have not seen anything new. I'm going to assume he's not available here for this one for Oakland, simply because this has been a lingering issue that I'm sure they want to get figured out. Maybe put him on the shelf for a couple of days here, see if he has to hit the injured list or not. But it's a minus 120 as I'm seeing it for Oakland, 9.5 over under. Montes has been pretty solid on the year. Indians bats have gone silent at times. How do you see this one breaking down? And do you have any interest in either Rodriguez or Montes as a starting pitcher on this slate?
Not really. Well, pitching is not very deep on this one at all. Montes isn't terrible. So, well, I guess I'll start with Rodriguez. I have him projected for, hold on here. I'm going to tell you how many strikeouts I have him projected for. It's not a lot. I have Rodriguez projected for, I had to pull it up here, 5.4 strikeouts in this game. That's not very solid, right? You take Oakland's care, you take his ability to get strikeouts, and this guy doesn't have the strikeout stuff. His swinging strike rate on the season is equally underwhelming. It's at 7.5%, 21% called strike plus swinging strike rate, the lowest on today's slate. So these are really ugly numbers, Dan. And I just think, if anything, even though Rodriguez has done a pretty decent job of limiting runs, I would say Oakland here is really an interesting stack, just because I don't think he's going to get the Ks. I don't think he's going to miss bats. Like, you got him. You've seen him face Miami, the White Sox, Kansas City, Baltimore. He did face Oakland once, but Kansas City, Miami, White Sox, and Baltimore all strike out at least at or above average clip. He has 3, 3, 3, and 5 strikeouts, or 3, 3. He got 6 against the White Sox and 5 against Baltimore, 3 against Oakland, the same team he's facing here. I actually find it to be a pretty decent spot for him. Montes on the other side, this dude recently has been pretty spectacular, right? And I don't hate the idea of going there. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. Like, there's no doubt about that. I wish he was cheaper. But, if you're pairing him with a guy that we'll get to in the next game, I don't hate it. Look, the truth is, though, Cleveland is not a team that is going to strike out at a very high clip, and I wouldn't expect that to change anytime soon. Against righties this season, they're striking out at 23.7%. So it's right around the league average rate. But you have a bunch of guys in there that don't strike out much either. They haven't shown that much power. They actually have a bottom 10 WRC plus. Matter of fact, it might be lower than that. Bottom 4 WRC plus at 77 against righties. I think it's a decent enough spot for Montes. Will the strikeouts be there is the question. If they are, I could see him having a very solid game. But I can tell you this much: if it was a regular size slate, Montes would not be there.
Yeah, and assume you can make the assumption, that didn't make much sense, but you can make the assumption here that Montes' price solely on this 4-game slate. If you had 8 or 12 games, you'd have him probably in the 8K range, simply raising his price to try to scope out the starting pitchers here on DK specifically. I'm with you on Oakland to an extent. I think there is a ton of power in this lineup, and they've been pretty good against both sides, both arms on the season. So I don't mind targeting Rodriguez. I know he's had some decent outings, but to your point, the Ks haven't been there a ton. To the Montes side of the coin, he's been doing a great job limiting walks, and that doesn't necessarily win you DFS tournaments or get you a ton of points, but it does limit runs. And so against a team like Cleveland, you like to see that at least the K- walk rate is still around 18-19%. K rate's not too high, but the walk rate is pretty low. So on a short slate, on a slate where you're going to have to be juggling a lot to figure out exactly what you can pay for pitching, I think he at least needs to be part of the discussion. Are there specific bats in this one that stand out to you in any way? Would it be going to the top end of the Oakland order, or do you see the Ramirez's and Lindors at least as one-offs that might be viable on a short slate?
They're all right. I feel like you're getting better opportunities here with the Oakland side of it. Now, like Jose Ramirez though is really cheap, and he has struggled, but I don't mind this spot. I just want to look up Montas based his ability to hold runners. Let's see here. So Montas is he's allowed 2 stolen bases. Last year, he didn't allow a single stolen base in 65 innings. 2 in 32 innings season previous. That was all out of the bullpen. But obviously has done a good job of holding runners. So that takes some shine away from these guys. But, their prices are down. I get that. I still prefer a lot of the other side of this one, and I don't think they're overpriced either. It's unfortunate that Chris Davis is on the IL because, that takes one potent bat out of this lineup. But at the same time, like now you don't have, on DraftKings at least, you don't have a single Oakland bat over 4,500, which I think would make them relatively easy to stack. And against a contact righty, you could do a whole lot worse.
All right, let's dive into next game up, Cincinnati and Milwaukee. This is a game that, as I see it right now, has a -120 in favor of Cincinnati in Milwaukee, 8.5 over under. If you have the team totals, or if there are team totals on this one as of yet, feel free to pass them along. But you look at this pitching matchup, and if you were to be, I'll say it, an old school baseball fan, just looking at the box score and what is laid out in your game program, you have Zach Davies at 5-0 with a 1.54 ERA, and Luis Castillo at 5-1 with a 1.90 ERA. Castillo has been dynamite this year. You look at his maturation as a stud pitcher in Major League Baseball. You've had multiple analysts, the Sarases of the world, who I'm a big fan of, say that the best may still yet to be here for Castillo, that the best is yet to come, that he's still developing pitches and still figuring some things out. Then on the other side, Zach Davies has been really dynamic and good since coming back from injury for Milwaukee, and has some definite upside here at home against a Reds team that has some holes in the lineup. So is this a pitcher's matchup? Is this one where you can see both sides having some upside, or do you prefer one or the other starters in this contest?
So, by the way, you said the totals in this one?
Yep.
The Reds at 4-4 and the Brewers at 4-2. It's a pretty low total, actually. By the way, I guess it's worth mentioning for the last game, the Indians are at 4-6. It's actually pretty high given the way Montas has performed. And the Oakland Athletics are at 5 even. So I like that. Interestingly enough, though, Dan, on a 4-game slate, half of the teams have a total above 5, at 5 or above, I should say. So that's really interesting given, the complete lack of options on this slate. I think that, when we talk about not having a lot of good pitching options, well, now you know why.
Right.
Luis Castillo is far and away just head and shoulders above anyone else on this slate for pitching purposes. And it could get even better if Christian Yelich remains out of the lineup. He was dealing with back spasms and was a late scratch yesterday.
Yep.
I mean, that'll only make this a better spot. Travis Shaw's on the IL. I would say that actually kind of hurts Castillo just because he had really struggled and he's striking out a ton. But there's going to be strikeouts in this lineup. That's not something I'm concerned about. The Brewers in this one ended up running out. Who was it? Who did they? I think Ben Gamel came in there instead. But it was Kane Moustakas, Braun, Grandal, Eric Dames, Ura, Gamel, Arcia, and Gonzales. Again, if Yelich is out, it's just a huge deal. Yelich has 19 home runs this year, 15 are at home. I think each of his first 13 home runs came in Miller Park. It is such a lefty-friendly Homer Park. It's a Homer Park, lefty or righty, but it's so much friendlier for lefties. If he's out, it's a bigger difference. And mind you, this is a night and day game. So he doesn't have a full 24 hours to rest up at all. I love Castillo here. And it is a product of the slate, of course. It is. It's a product of the slate. There's no denying that. But when you're okay, so this is what matters most. If we're talking about like who are the best overall pitchers on this slate,
Yep.
just take a look at some of these numbers. It'll explain everything for you. I'll make it quick, but it's necessary. All right, so Ks per 9, 11.09 for Castillo. No one else is at 9 Ks per 9 on the slate. K rate, 31.8. No one else is above 23% on this slate, okay? When you're talking about projected strikeouts, he is at 9.82. No one else is above. Well, Montes is at 7.9 in this one. And then outside of that, which is probably, actually, that's probably a little bit high. Outside of that, you name it. Swinging strike rate for Castillo, 15.3. Montes is the only other one in double digits. He's at 11. 33% called plus swinging strike rate. No one else is above 28%. Like that's how much better he is than everybody on this slate. It's pretty obvious. And when you're talking about the opponent strikeout rate, the Milwaukee Brewers are also going to strike out at a pretty decent clip. So I think you have a lot to like here, and Castillo is your number one. But you mentioned Davies. Davies has actually looked pretty decent. He's looked good. Is it sustainable? I think that's a pretty valid question, right? If you were to look at his BABIP against lefties, he's at, 239, righties, 298. So that's around league average. He's done a good job of limiting home runs. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. His swinging strike rate is pretty putrid. It's 7.8%. But it honestly may just be one of those days where this is how I felt about Soroka the other day. Soroka's a better pitcher with better strikeout stuff. But Davies, I could see him going 7 scoreless innings here. The Reds are not a good team.
Right.
And we've seen it all season long. They have been really, really bad, right? There's at this point, there's nothing really redeeming about this team. If you were to look where they rank against righties, you're going to get them towards the bottom of the league in almost every category. 28th in WRC plus. They are bottom. Okay, actually, ISO is, I guess, middle of the league, but WOBA and WRC plus are way down there. So 28th and 26th, 24.5% strikeouts, which is actually a little bit higher than I thought. That is actually, Dan, I think it's top 10. It's it's 8th. So I think you probably just bite the bullet and go with Davies or Montes here. We will get to one other guy that I think is at least worth discussing, but none of them you're going to feel great about, especially when you look at some of the totals in these games.
And I assume if we're talking offense here, we talked about the pitchers both being viable, but you'd have to talk about one-off power bats that have upside to homer, right? That's what this comes down to. Right. Catch one off of Castillo, catch one off Davies. Davies more likely to give up the long ball than Castillo is. Clearly, you have a Joey Votto, who hasn't hit for a ton of power. His price tag's down to $3,500, would stand out a little bit. You have Sanzel in the outfield, has been leading off against lefties, though, I think only. I don't know if he's batting lead off against righties as well. But you'll try to find a one-off or two here to make it work on a 4-game slate. In general, on a 4-game slate, are you as concerned about playing a batter against your own pitcher?
If it's one, I mean, I don't ever like to do it, but if it's one guy, it's not the end of the world. But if I can avoid it, I will.
Right. Let's go next to Kansas City and St. Louis. I forget the road that connects Kansas City and St. Louis, but Brad Keller and Michael Wacha. You have a 24-23 Cardinals team against a 16-31 Royals team. 1:15 first pitch, East Coast. It's supposed to be 80.
Wacha or Wainwright?
I have Wacha in front of me. Let's see who
that game was postponed.
Oh, right. So let's see. Wainwright took no, that doesn't give me an actual update. I will double check, but
right now. Okay, it is Wacha on the early. Everywhere else has it wrong, but MLB has Wacha Keller.
Right.
And,
I've Keller from Kansas City. Yeah.
all right. All
Uh,
right.
so you do have 88-degree weather here, supposedly at first pitch in the Midwest. That is a bit warm, as it were, and clearly rain coming through the area, suspending the game. On Tuesday, you're going to have some humidity here as well. No total from what I can see as of right now. That might just be because of the doubleheader.
I got one for you.
Oh, great.
4.2 for Royals and 5.4 for the Cardinals.
All right. So we'll deal with that. You have Keller. You have Michael Wacha. These are two arms that have had upside in the past. Keller to start the year, Wacha clearly in his career, and we are on a short slate. Do either of them at their price points at least make a little bit of sense, or are you staying away from both?
That's kind of the thing. Like, I'm not huge on Wacha at all, but this is another spot where just given the lack of pitching, you might have to look to someone like Michael Wacha. You might not have much of a choice. So I don't think it's the worst option. I mean, I would go to him after Castillo, obviously. I think probably after Davies. At Monta's price, though, I might go to Wacha here. The big thing is, I think, DraftKings has Wainwright.
Yep, it's 6,600 for Wacha.
Right. DraftKings has Wainwright. My guess is on this slate, they probably would have priced Wacha higher, but they didn't. And they don't have him projected to start, which makes him really cheap. I think, honestly, Wacha might be the highest owned pitcher on this slate alongside Luis Castillo. Him and Castillo probably going to be the two highest owned. That would be my guess, because the Royals are not a very good team. They got a few guys at the top of the order, but I mean, aside from that, the bottom, it thins out really quick and it gets ugly, and you start being able to get strikeouts there as well. So I think this is probably a spot where we can make a good argument for him just based on the lack of depth here.
Makes total sense to me, and clearly there will be offensive pieces that you can take from this game as well, but at that price point, stands out a decent amount. I don't know if I'm right with this comparison, but I feel like Wacha has a certain Josh Engelman quality to him. I think they have similar look to them. I don't know if I just feel like they're similar human beings. They look somewhat alike, at least in the headshot they have over there on DraftKings.
I'll be honest, I never got that impression, but you may be right.
Yeah, there it is. Let's talk.
Oh, I see it.
Right?
I see it now. Yeah. All right.
There's something to it.
I actually do. I feel like his voice would sound the same too.
I have to find an interview of Michael Wacha quickly. The interesting thing here then would be price point leads us towards one of the pitchers, but offense will be in play here as well. You had a total for St. Louis of over 5, so clearly they're in play, but this is an offense that has struggled a bit. You've seen Carpenter really struggle. Goldschmidt hasn't been great. They don't necessarily strike out a ton, but still hasn't necessarily been one that's been clicking on all cylinders. They have lots of offensive pieces that you probably like in a good spot. Is this good enough against Keller to go with Carpenter, Goldschmidt, Ozuna, Jose Martinez? Are these bats that you're willing to roster on this slate?
Yeah, I think that total's a little bit high, but the weather at Busch Stadium does turn it into a pretty different park, and he has not looked great. The big thing with Keller, though, is like even though he's allowing a good amount of runs, the guy just doesn't allow home runs. It's pretty odd actually, but it's been the case. Last year, I don't think he allowed a home run through his first 50 innings pitched, and then you look at him this year and you're seeing something very similar. He's allowing 0.47 home runs per 9. 0.34 to lefties and 0.57 to righties. He keeps the ball in the yard. Will he be able to do it today? I don't know. It's a good question. But what I do know is the big thing, with Keller is he gets a lot of ground balls and, well, more so doesn't give up a lot of fly balls, right? 24% fly balls to righties, 23% to lefties, not a ton of hard contact. Those are the areas that make him better, but his xFIP is very high, 5.7 and 4.67, which should not be that high for a ground ball pitcher. And I think that's something to consider. His BABIP against lefties particularly is very low. So you probably start seeing some home runs sooner or later. Maybe not a ton, but I don't think a guy like this continues to limit the long ball as well as he has. So, yeah, I have definite interest in Cardinal bats. Now, I guess the question is where?
Right.
Well, the good thing about Keller is he doesn't get strikeouts, right? Like he's walking a lot of batters. He has a -1% K minus BB rate against lefties, 5.2, yeah, 5.2% against righties. Not great. Weighted on base average to righties is 346, and the ISO is 188, which is high given the fact that he hasn't allowed a lot of home runs. So I do think this is actually a stronger spot than it looks just based on his home runs allowed. And I have him at what? Where is it? Right around 4.8 strikeouts here. Like that seems about right for a guy like Keller. He's not going to give you a lot of Ks.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just not. So I think the way I see it is, he is maybe not going to allow home runs, but if he is, it would probably be in this game where you've got a ton of right-handed pop, very warm temperatures, and I think the bottom falls out eventually on Keller. I'm not saying he's terrible, but I don't see him being able to continue this at this rate.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think you pointed out the K-minus walk. It's funny if you're on FanGraphs, typically it's one page, right? When you're looking at probable pitchers for the next day, but with double headers and a couple other things, there are 35 pitchers listed on FanGraphs. So I actually had to go to the next page when sorting by K-minus walk, and he's at 1.9% on the year against everybody, and that's an insanely low number.
Oh,
he's
it's
walking 14.3% of batters, 16.3% K. Rate. That's just nominally better than Dan Straley, and Straley's been dreadful.
Yep.
So take that for what it is worth. Let's close it out with Seattle and Texas, some globe life in our lives as we have a matchup between Marco Gonzales and I guess, is he actually starting here? Adrian Sampson has been a long reliever / part of the tandem with the opener a couple of times out. I think he's slated to actually be the starter here in this matchup between the Mariners and the Texas Rangers. I'm seeing a 12 over under with Seattle, favored by a little bit, -110 as I see it now. But 12 is a gigantic over under for any slate. It's a slate here with just 4 games. Clearly, the weather and the pitching matchup is going to yield some results. Do you have any interest in Marco Gonzales here in Globe Life, or is this just a stay away for you?
No, none whatsoever. Now, I will say that the Rangers are just not as good against lefties. They, unlike many other teams, they're not very capable of going heavy right-handed. They're not. Like you look at Tommy Milone, he only gave up 2 runs across 5 innings, struck out 6. The Rangers, man, they will really struggle. So, is it the craziest idea? No, especially with Elvis Andrus on the IL. It's not the wildest idea ever. This guy isn't going to get a lot of strikeouts. He has a K rate of 11 or 12% against lefties, and I think that's the most disturbing part because he's going to face 5 lefties in this lineup. Like if it was a lefty that was really good against lefties, I would have definite interest in Gonzales, but he really isn't. So what are we getting here, right? It's like, oh, all right, nice. So he's facing a lot of lefties. Oh, wait, he hasn't been very good against those lefties. Look, he doesn't give up much power to them at all, but at a park like this, I'd rather know that I could get some strikeouts because I can't rely on him at Globe Life where temperatures are going to be, I don't know, did you mention them?
The temperatures?
Yeah.
88, right?
Yeah, okay, 88. Yeah, it's going to be hot. So that makes it way less appealing. Like I would need him to be good against lefties. His swinging strike rate against lefties this season. So his K rate's 12.7%, which is terrible. Is the site down? Yep, it is. Let's just assume it's bad because I'm pretty sure it is. And his total swinging strike rate on the season is 8.4%. I think Gonzales is a good real-life pitcher. He does a great job of painting the corners and getting a lot of called strikes, but probably a stay-away spot here, Dan, even though the interesting thing is how much do you love the Rangers? Because the Rangers have the second highest total on the slate. My guess is they're going to be very popular. I don't think it's crazy if you wanted to get leverage over the field to come in underweight on them, even if you're not going to have a lot of Marco Gonzales. Like even if you go Michael Wacha over Gonzales, maybe not going to Texas could make a lot of sense here. And on the other side, like obviously Seattle is very much in play. Adrian Sampson hasn't faced a ton of batters. Well, 184 batters faced this season, 13% K rate. So that is actually the lowest of any pitcher on this slate. Not very good. His swinging strike rate is 8.9%, but he's not putting batters away. And against righties, he's allowing a 275 ISO, 2.2 home runs per nine, and a 428 weighted on base average. So, also a very, very, very high whip. And we know the Mariners have quite a bit of right-handed power. This is my favorite offense on the day, but I think I'd probably put St. Louis second, and then Oakland, and then maybe the Rangers, only because I expect the Rangers to be popular. And it's just like, okay, could they go out there and put up big numbers? They could, but they're probably going to have 4 lefties in the top 6 of their lineup. So while Gonzales doesn't get a lot of strikeouts against them, they aren't great at lefty bats, and he has done a good job of suppressing power. Hasn't allowed a home run to lefties this season. So it's kind of an odd spot there, and one where I wouldn't mind getting away from the field, assuming it's high on the Rangers.
Yeah, I would have Mariners pretty high up with between Haniger, Santana, and Encarnacion. Then you throw Vogelbach into the mix too, Jay Bruce. You have a lot of upside, especially when you're chasing home runs over on DraftKings comparatively to other sites, to have a lot of their pieces in your lineup or even a full stack, depending on what lineup they roll out. Dave made the point before also, there probably will be some strange lineups here. It's day games after night games for a lot of these squads. Probably going to have some of these older veterans resting. As you often see, you'll probably have some backup catchers in the lineup here too, which maybe give you a little bit of salary relief. If you were to take the entirety of the slate, all 4 games, who's your favorite bat? What's the one bat that quickly looking over and seeing these matchups that you would most want to have in your lineup? Obviously, lineup construction and stacks can change this come Wednesday morning, but who's the one bat that as of right now you'd most want in your lineup?
So the top bat on the entire slate, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. You know what? I'm gonna go Dan Vogelbach.
Yep, that power is real, and it's so amazing. People always forget he and Schwarber were teammates. Vogelbach was a Cubs minor
the team
leaguer.
of no necks.
Yep, of no necks, and they look way too similar. But they must have been fun for batting practice. But he is forced the Mariners' hands this year. They were supposed to actually send him back down, then there were injuries, and then he just hit, and so he's stayed with the team. And I am a big Vogelbach fan here as well, and I think he's the guy with the most power upside as you look through this slate. So it makes a ton of sense to have a bit of him in the lineup. I'd love to see Matt Olson get back into the power swing. I know he had a home run 2 games ago, has sprinkled them in since being back from that Hammett bone injury, but I could see him having a big day here as well against Rodriguez. Any final thoughts on this slate, Dave, before we say so long?
No, I think that's about it. Good luck to everyone. And if you haven't checked out Chernobyl yet, I would suggest doing so. I'm about to watch episode 3 as soon as we sign off.
Yep, I need to check that out. That will do it for Happy Talk here on the DFS Early Bird podcast. You can find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. I did notice in the YouTube chat, and not really necessarily the best place to hang out, somebody saying, well, this guy must have really gotten under your skin. You've talked about him for a while. I just was blown away by this tweet. If you haven't seen it, Dave and I retweeted it over on Twitter of somebody saying you can't take somebody wearing their hat backwards seriously and something about Happy Talk. It's fun. Like, it's fun.
Yeah. No, there was, in all sincerity, like, there was nothing taken serious, at least not on my end about it. Like, think about it. And here's why I would. Here's if you're talking about my hat being backwards, if you're trashing my analysis, and maybe I'll get a little pissed. But if it's the hat I couldn't believe he didn't bring up the vape.
Right. No. Any of it. Like, it's just amazing. Anyway, That's going to do it. You find Dave at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find me at Dan Stravin. Of course, it's at Osmo_com. As we often remind you, subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, even if it's about Dave's backwards hat. That is fine. Happy to read them and share them here on the podcast and on YouTube. We appreciate each and every one of you, even the ones who don't like us. So with that said, wish you the best of luck on Wednesday's early slate. We'll be back with more right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.